doing great. We already have a couple people. Shorty B456. Hey. All right. So you ready for another great conversation today?
I think I am. I think I
Good.
am. I think it's going to be a very engaging conversation. I
Yeah.
think it's um, what's the word? Heart. I think everybody's hearts are pounded because of all the things that we're going to say.
You're not even a dad yet, and that was a little bit of a dad joke,
Hey,
but I'm gonna let you have it.
I guess that's it. Just naturally happens after you turn 30 or
You
something.
might be right. I'm getting up there too. So, the 30 and over club.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. 30 plus,
yep,
30 plus.
hopefully you had a great day today.
Yeah, everything's been good. Good productive day. Had some clients earlier today, and
Nice.
yeah. How about you?
I also had a good day. Busy day in the office, so I'm excited to talk about a very important topic.
For
Um,
sure.
I never know what to do with my glasses. I guess I'm gonna take them off. They don't the glare doing so much. Luckily, I can still see you.
There you go. That's the important part, right?
Yes. So where do we begin, Cliff? So we are, encouraging people not to break our hearts, but more importantly, not break their own hearts, right?
Right.
And because February is American Heart Month, um, but we thought this was a unique opportunity to also tie in the fact that it is Black History Month. For us, Black history happens every single day of our lives. And the
Hmm.
people that we encounter and the experiences that we have individually and as a community, but it's a good time to highlight that to the world at large. And in particular, heart health, when it affects more Black Americans than any other ethnic group, I think it's important for us to have this, maybe actually only second to Native Americans, actually, to be technical, because I don't want anybody. And thank you. Congratulations were brought in. I got married, y'all. Well, legally, I'm supposed to have my
Yeah.
destination wedding.
I
But
wanted to say something, but I didn't know if anybody really knew about it like
yeah,
that.
it's just I never know how to navigate that.
Of course.
but
I,
I'm very excited to be a wife. But anyhow, um where do we even start? I think there is sort of like a little bit, there's diet and exercise and lifestyle. So it's just like trifecta. And of course, when we say lifestyle, people think that it does encompass diet and exercise, but can be a little bit separate. So, what do we want to talk about first, Cliff?
no, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think we should definitely talk about the statistics first. Especially now, like one thing that I've really found out as a surprise, just from hearing from others, is they believe, like especially in 2020, 2021, 2022, around the time of the pandemic, that COVID was a leading cause of death um, during those years. I've actually had encounters with people that actually believed that COVID was the leading cause of death, but it's not, and I think that's been a big concern that we are overlooking because we're so concerned about staying 6 feet away and wearing these masks and washing our hands and all these other things, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. But we aren't looking at the things that are the bigger issue, the bigger issues that have been bigger issues for years, right? So, one thing that I've been surprised by is just hearing that people are very concerned with COVID, but they're not really as concerned with COVID as they are with their heart health or cancer, which is the second leading cause of death. So,
Yeah,
um,
and it's
no, go ahead.
interesting
Go ahead.
because I think part of the challenges, and we talked about this a little bit at the top of the year with our conversation surrounding New Year resolution. So, guys, you can check that out. That is in the archives. But when it's imminent danger, something that you can actively feel and see, like COVID, that was palpable, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
had a friend or a family member that you were talking to today, and then 2 days later, they were in the hospital.
yeah.
And so people can identify with the fear surrounding that versus something that's a slow creep that you may not feel every day. And if you don't go to the doctor regularly, you might not even know that it's a
Right.
problem for you. And in fact, with the tricky thing about the deaths related to COVID is that for many people, having risk factors like heart disease made it more likely for them to have
Exactly.
complications. So had we done a little bit better managing those things in the past, then our risk is going to be different in the future.
Hmm.
But again, it's kind of like that sweat equity that happens in healthcare. Like a lot of the times you're not going to get that instant gratification, but over time the benefits that you get are going to be leaps and bounds, right?
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. So,
And
yeah,
do
no, I think.
you
Oh, go ahead.
just out of curiosity, do you know what all encompasses heart disease? Like what, because you're a personal trainer by trade, and so I think that might be a good, I'm just curious to know how much you know.
Um, I don't. I'm not too in depth with the, I guess, the anatomy there. I know certain things,
Yeah,
but you can definitely educate me because, this is your
that's fair.
field, right?
Fair,
You
that's
know,
fair. Hey, Rosemary. um, so it's kind of interesting because certainly the types of heart disease that we most commonly talk about are going to be high blood pressure,
right.
right? So blood pressure issues, and then coronary artery disease. Certainly, those are the ones that are going to potentially kind of do your more so-called drop dead moments, like where you may just have a acute issue that kind of takes you out, or causes a lot of debility as far as healthcare.
Hmm.
But it will also include congestive heart failure, so differences in how well the heart pumps. It can include atrial fibrillation, which is more of an electrical issue. That's still a heart-based disease. So it's important to understand that, when we're talking about ways to manage this isn't as simple as just your blood pressure, but how well the electrical impulses go through your heart to make sure it beats well.
Hmm.
Making sure that the arteries that feed into your heart and go to other places aren't clogged and going to cause issues there as well, and that your heart can effectively pump well.
Hmm.
So you have like the pump mechanics, you have the electrical mechanics, that all, and then the plumbing, right? So pump, plumbing, and electrical that could be involved with heart disease.
Okay. So what are some symptoms that like people can look out for? What are some things that we can kind of look out for to give us a high alert of saying, okay, I should go to the doctor to get checked out?
The scariest part is the fact that oftentimes you won't have symptoms of heart disease until it's already started to impact your body.
Right.
Hence the reason for us to develop good habits now, or
Mhm.
not even now, right? Good habits in youth leading through your adult years, so that you avoid that build up effect that could affect your heart. However, things that for sure you want to make your way to the hospital, and not necessarily always the hospital, because there are certainly going to be like levels to the symptoms, right? If you have chest pain, don't set up an appointment with your primary care doctor, please. This could be a heart attack that you should be seen for, especially if you have other risk factors. um,
Mhm.
so if you do see a doctor regularly, then you might have some latitude. You know some other things about your health already. But if you don't and you have chest pain, go straight to the emergency department so they can walk you through it. Um, a lot of that could be pain in your arm. In particular, most people experience in their left arm. The jaw can be another sign. um, people most describe pressure, like a pressure-like sensation, or that an elephant is sitting on their chest. Um, Shortness of breath associated with that can be an issue as well. And then palpitations, just feeling like your heart is skipping a beat, excuse me, is another red flag that perhaps we need to dig a little bit deeper and potentially be admitted or checked out more immediately versus kind of waiting till next week to make an appointment.
Yeah. So what have your experiences been in the past as far as like working with something along these lines? If you've had experiences with that,
What do you mean? As far as
as
getting
far
people
as like
assistance?
working with a patient that has come in with chest pains, if you've
Oh,
had that
oh
experience.
yeah,
Mhm.
it sort of depends on where they are on the trajectory.
Yeah.
So like, let's say, so a younger person like us, like so in their 30s, that works out regularly, my approach might be different than a 60-year-old patient that smokes, for
Mm-hmm.
example. So your alert and the fear factor is going to be a little bit different, but of course you ask more questions. Because, for example, sometimes reflux can feel like chest pain, but that's because the stomach is in such close proximity to where the heart is. So, kind of fleshing that out through conversation, a lot of it is your history taking skills combined with other risk factors. But as far as prevention goes, it's saying we need to see you at least once a year to check your blood pressure. If we see that your blood pressure went up from last year, then we need to have a conversation. What's going on? What's different? Hi, Ashley. But what's different? What do we need to do to make sure that we prevent these things? Or a new patient off the street that might have a high blood pressure. Oh, well, tell me more about your lifestyle. Let's look. Are you taking any supplements? How much caffeine do you drink? Do you exercise regularly? Because all of these things can impact what the blood pressure reading is that we get, which the high blood pressure creates stress on the arteries that can even make it more likely to develop the plaque buildup that can create a heart attack. Um, and of course, high blood pressure can also contribute to strokes. So it's just so many layers. Um, but certainly awareness is important, and just sort of getting checked out is a good first step. And again, us working as a community to have those conversations, because presentation of a heart attack can be different from genders, right? Some people might feel nauseated, might not even have chest pain. Um, so just if you don't feel right, at least go and have the conversation. Yep.
Mm-hmm. That's yeah, no, that's very insightful. You kind of hit on some points as far as like first thing is habits. You mentioned smoking. What are your thoughts there? Of course, with smoking, I know there's things about how that affects your heart. Um, even alcohol, there's the red wine theory with
Mm-hmm.
the what is it?
The
Red wine can help
antioxidant,
improve your yeah.
often like we see some
And
positive.
I got some things I want to bring up about
All
that too.
right.
But you go first. I'm
Well,
gonna
I
bite my tongue
mean, I think we could probably tag team it a little bit
for
because,
sure.
we talked a little bit about what heart disease actually is, right? And how it might present when it's too late. But I've already sort of emphasized how it's important for us to do our best to not even get to that point, right? Awareness of why we recommend certain behaviors to avoid the negative effects that it can put on your heart. And so that trifecta, right? Diet, exercise, and lifestyle. And so certainly alcohol use would fall into diet. And so like the types of foods we eat. And nowadays the internet is a blessing and a curse, because oftentimes people use internet for what they want to use it for, right? So, we can Google all sorts of things, but how we choose to use Google and when we let it cause us anxiety, that's a topic for a whole nother day. Because I love Google, but sometimes
Yeah,
it will
it'll be setting
twitch.
me up now.
It'll twitch what people told you they read on Google.
Yeah,
However,
yeah.
it really can be helpful, right? That can whether you're finding a support group or clarification, I do think it can be helpful. But heart healthy diets are going to look different from person to person, community to community. And, part of this conversation is also to be mindful that the eating habits that we have culturally are often villainized, right?
Mm,
So for Black and brown people, our cultural and foods might include pork and different pork byproducts, fried foods, more starches and sauces, in particular gravy, things like that. And everybody might feel a little bit differently, but these foods are not inherently bad. It's our relationship with those foods that can be problematic, including alcohol. Because
yeah,
even red wine that might have some positive benefits, if you drink a bottle of red wine every day,
that's not as beneficial.
that's not so
Yeah,
beneficial. It's about a glass of wine, right? And
yeah,
a serving of wine is actually considered about 5 ounces, so not even a full cup, right? So sometimes we have to ask people, oh, so you drink like how much? Oh, 3 cups. Well, what's your cup look like?
yeah.
Is this an actual measuring cup, or is this your Stanley cup? You know what I mean?
Not the Stanley Cup. Not the Stanley Cup. Oh
I don't
man.
own one, but I know they're popular right now, so that's a good frame of reference for
Oh my
people.
gosh. Yeah. Yeah. No, that was good. You were on point with that one. That
We
was right on top.
do not need to drink a Stanley cup full of alcohol in a day. Okay, that might be like actually, I'm not sure how many ounces. That's probably a whole bottle
It,
of alcohol. Like, if you think
it,
about it,
yeah.
not to mention the juice that you might put in there. That's perfect. Someone said that they actually measure out their wine, and I think that especially for some people who don't drink often
Mm-hmm.
or might have challenges with mindfulness surrounding certain things, measuring helps you kind of stay within those confines. Because, if I've been up out of my chair to go to the refrigerator 3 times for wine,
Yeah.
then, I've met my limit for today. So even if you don't physically measure it, you could kind of police yourself a little bit, keeping in mind that a little goes a long way with some things, and not to be anxious about it or feel like you can't do it. But depending on what your goals are and what your health status is, there's a fine balance.
Yeah. And I think along with that, as far as like wines and the theory of not the theory, but the research that comes out about how wine is beneficial to the heart,
Mhm.
I think people overlook what type of wine. And I feel like now that I think about it, most of the research that I've come across in past experiences, it doesn't specifically say what type of wine either. It just says red wine. So I think most people think, oh, any red wine is good. And that's not typically the case because most red wine, not most red wine, but some red wines are sweeter than
Mhm.
others. And then you have the super, super dry ones.
Mhm.
And more than likely, I'm not entirely sure, and you could probably speak on this better than
Mhm.
I could. I'm pretty certain that it's not the ones with sugar that are the most beneficial for our heart health. Um, if that is the case, and in my opinion, what I believe is like alcohol overall is not beneficial for for health in general. Like there are other things that we can do and
Mhm.
prioritize outside of red wine in order to improve our heart health. I think that it's a way for us to have a good time and to a certain extent, have a good time, but at the same time, dedicated toward our health to some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like Rosin mentioned, alcohol is sugar. So there is sugar in alcohol, and it's not as beneficial for the body as something else would be. So yeah. So what are
Yeah,
your thoughts on that?
exactly. And I think again, it's context, right?
Mhm.
Because most certainly I think anybody would be hard pressed to say that alcohol is included in a regular balanced diet, right? They did not put alcohol on the food pyramid back in the day, right? And it is definitely not included in the My Plate model,
Not at
none of
all.
those things, right? The reason why, again, is not that alcohol is inherently bad for us, right? But it does not have nutritional value.
Right.
There's zero nutritional value from wine, just like even though sugar itself is not bad, there is no other nutritional value outside of carbs, right? You get some energy fuel from sugar, but besides the fuel that you receive, you're not getting specific nutrients, no vitamins, no minerals. It's just straight carb, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can get into a nerdy moment about yeast and fermentation and how all that works, right? But that's part of the process for making alcohol. The longer the yeast is working to make wine, the more sugar it uses. Therefore, it gets drier and less sweet.
Yeah.
And so, yes, that's what's helping. However, again, if you have 5 ounces of your Stella Rosa, okay, right, which they have the red form, is that really going to negatively impact your heart over a 6-month period? No, right? But if you're, again, drinking a bottle of Stella Rosa by yourself, even once a week,
Right. Right.
that's probably more than what you need, especially if other things are not in line in your overall lifestyle, right? So
Yeah.
you can have like some compounding effects of your behaviors that take something that I would say is not good nor bad. It just is. Alcohol just is. Because, I always remind people Jesus drank wine, okay? Now, things were different back then. Don't get me wrong. There was a purpose for why they did sometimes more wine than water, right? Our life is different. Don't get me wrong. We've come a ways, thank God. But you see that there are certain moments that they did drink wine, right? And I'm not a preacher, a minister, or anything like that, but things sometimes become ceremonial, right? Certain celebrations, and that's what we do now,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh, I think I lost you.
Things can go overboard. So, because even speaking about sugar, I think, and this is one of my favorite examples. I might use it every time we have a live. I'm not sure if I used it last time, but it will be hard pressed for anybody to say that watermelon is bad
Yeah.
or that an apple. But I like watermelon because watermelons are larger, right? Watermelon's not bad, but if you ate that whole watermelon in one sitting,
That's a lot of sugar.
that's a lot
Yeah.
more sugar or food in general, right, than anybody needs in one sitting.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of creates that context, right? There's nothing wrong with the watermelon. There's nothing wrong with having a glass of wine or a drink, but do you really need to have that much all at once?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, things to think about to put it in context.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. That's very insightful. So, man, all right, let's dig into it because we talked about the part of the nitty gritty, but you also talked about culture, our culture specifically. So that being the soul food, the fried chicken, the green beans, and I don't even want to go. Everybody know what I'm talking about. The good stuff,
The good
the good stuff
stuff.
with gravy,
Yeah.
right? So, um, me being a nutrition coach, this is something that I'm passionate about, and I know that it's something that we need to address because it is affecting our heart health, especially because African Americans are the leading, ethnicity, the leading race for heart disease, right? And I think part of that has to do with our food choices, the foods that we're eating and things like that. Um, I understand how much of a cultural impact it is to have soul food, and I truly appreciate it. Thanksgiving, Christmas, the holidays come around. You have that Sunday morning, or not Sunday morning, but that Sunday evening meal. Those are special times. But there are also things that we have to be mindful of moving forward, if we want to continue to take care of our health, not only for our health, for our hearts, but for everything else beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts in the kitchen. It starts with nutrition. It starts in being able to live a healthier
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle, by nutrition and by our nutritional
Yeah.
intake, as well as by exercising, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
my question to you is like, what are your thoughts regarding the nutritional component of everything? I want to kind of go back and forth with this,
Yeah.
so I want to,
I
yeah, so,
um again, this is another thing that has so many layers, and um it would be nice at some point even to have a historian to even participate in
ooh,
types of conversations,
ooh,
because when you know I I would even say a historian, but also I'll stick a pin in it and stick with the historian for right now, because there are complex conversations about food culture for Black Americans. And
mhm,
I think sometimes we don't shine enough light on it or acknowledge how important it is to who we are,
yeah,
but at the same time don't acknowledge that the same thing that built this country can also be one of the things that can be our demise.
mm,
So one thing I can say though is that we can't rest our laurels simply on saying the food that Black people eat is bad and we need to do better. That is true, right? But in addition to that, there are factors at play that Black and brown people don't have control over, that could push people in a certain direction with how they eat and how they live. And so we have to acknowledge that and educate, right? And one of those things is acknowledging that, again, the food itself isn't bad, it's the relationship with the
yeah,
food. Our enslaved descendants worked in fields, broke their backs all day, literally built the country, right? And they might have eaten once a day.
yeah,
So that heavy meal that they had that might have included some of those things that we consider, you know, unhealthy, um, you know,
which are still,
we're energy
yeah,
source, right?
yeah,
That was
and
the
those,
energy source to get them through the day. And then keeping in mind that things that changed when our life became more abundant is different also. If we think about where that food culture started, right, there were still many days where people just had rice and beans and a piece of cornbread, not necessarily fried chicken and fatback and biscuits.
yeah,
They had some of those staples that in some cultures, for and one in particular, a blue zone in Costa Rica, They
I was just
call
about
it,
to bring up
yeah,
those
they
ones.
call it the three sisters: corn, white rice, and beans. That is their primary source of nutrition in addition to fruits and vegetables. But then they eat meat 5% of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then a part of their culture, even now, is still that they do heavy work on a regular basis. So even though they eat all the things that American culture tells us is bad, corn, two of the three, right? We tell people corn, that's a starchy vegetable. You shouldn't eat very much of that. Well, that's what tortillas are made of, which is a big staple in the Latin American community, right? So is it inherently bad? No, our relationship with it is what is the issue. And our lifestyle of today can't keep up with the abundant calories of our traditional Black meals. So that's why primarily it's a Sunday meal for me, even sometimes every other Sunday, or you kind of police yourself a little bit so that you're keeping in mind whatever your personal goals are. But we can't die on the heel of it's my culture. I think it's important to include those things, but if you have had a heart attack and you have challenges with managing your blood pressure, eating certain things has to take a back seat to your health. It's just unfortunately how it goes, and not necessarily giving it up altogether, but adjusting how you do it. Thank God for the inventor of the air fryer, right? Um,
Thanks.
and I remember when I was a kid, I begged my mom to get shake and bake because that commercial just seemed so intriguing, right? So that's that's a way to get crispy chicken without the deep frying process, right? And then now we have the air fryer, and then because the traditional shake and bake, you got to dip it in butter and you got to do all this stuff, right? And then now you use the air fryer, a little spritz of your cooking spray,
Oil.
yeah, your cooking spray or your spray olive oil, and you're good to go, and you transform your food, right? I love how my family is more likely to do smoked turkey instead of always using smoked pork, which is inherently has a higher sodium content than the turkey. So then that helps push the boundaries a little bit too. But then playing around with sauteed vegetables in your other vegetables, so the onions, the peppers, that are also staples in other cultures as well, right?
Yeah.
So again, I'm a little bit of a foodie, so I don't want to start using terms that get us in the weeds, but the trinity of the Creole population, Mirepoix, like those are all things that cultures take, and we need to start to jazz it up, like Zatarans. That's like my mom joke for the jazz it up.
Oh man. No, I think that's all good. Going back to, as far as cultural impact and what the food that we have and we appreciate mostly for culture, you hit the nail on the head. Like they are foods that historically, and we would love to have a historian on if we could make that happen. That'd be cool. That those foods were some of those foods that some of the foods that we appreciate now go back historically to foods that were meals for us to eat because slave owners gave us those scraps. So like the fat bag and like you mentioned and a few other things there. I don't know if this is true. I hear different stories, but like the hush puppy is called the hush puppy because slave owners,
Pack to throw to the dogs. Yeah,
yeah, they would throw it to the dog to keep the dogs quiet from, from getting them. So getting the slaves. So, but yeah, so there's so many different foods that we have now and appreciate that we overlook because we don't know the true history of it, or we may not know as much of the history, or don't recognize it, or don't acknowledge it as much as we should. And like you would mention, the food that we have now it's not the problem, but it's the lifestyle behind the food. Like the food isn't the issue, as much as the lifestyle that we are living in comparison to what they were doing back in the, years ago, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They were out there working. Physical activity is the key thing that they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the prettiest type of physical activity at
But it
all.
was grueling.
Not something that I would
It burned a
encourage
lot of
anybody to do.
calories.
Yeah, but you're out there in the sun. You're burning calories. You're
You're
sweating
building
and doing all these
muscle
different
because
things.
you're lifting. You're
Exactly.
it's
You're
a
doing a
lot.
lot.
It was
You're
a lot.
doing a lot. And because of that, they were able to eat just about whatever came across their table, right? Whereas today, we aren't physically active. We're stuck working 8 hours a day, sitting in front of a computer, sitting in front of a phone, like we're doing right now, whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
We're sitting down. We're not as active. We're living more sedentary lifestyles, and that has totally affected us in our community because we aren't living active, and then we eat the food while we're sitting down and while we're not being
Mm-hmm.
active, and ultimately, it's not a good mix. It's not a good
Yeah.
mix. So that's something that we have to address, and that goes into living a
Mm-hmm.
healthy lifestyle in exercising, doing certain things. You talked about how the blue zone in Costa Rica. Costa Rica? Yeah.
One of
The
them.
blue zone in Costa Rica. Now, if anybody's not familiar with what blue zones are specific areas within the world, and I believe it's six or
I think
seven.
it's 6 or 7. Yeah, 6 or 7.
Yeah, 6 or 7 blue zones, and these areas, very small, quaint areas with throughout the world, are areas where people live up to 100 or above, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a
Without
very
heart
large population.
disease. Yeah.
Without heart disease, without the cancers, without the other, all the other situations that unfortunately are taking our lives here in the U.S. Speaking of U.S., one of the blue zones is actually located in California. I can't think of the
Me
name of the
neither.
state or the city, but there is one in California, and then you have another one in Costa Rica. There's a few in Italy and other things. There is a great documentary on Netflix that you can check out about blue zones. So feel free to check that out. But one thing I want to note about one thing that I've learned from that documentary and from what I've learned about blue zones is that people were doing different things in those different areas. Not everybody was
That's
doing the same thing.
right.
But the main thing that everybody was doing was being active and physical activity.
Yep.
I remember one instance in Italy, people were active in Italy. Even these old people over
Mm-hmm.
100 were going up steep slopes and hills
Yep.
and in their cities, and they were walking because they didn't have vehicles. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the physical activity behind them walking, just walking. And that's one thing that we can start, but that's where we can start. We can start in order to take care of our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
We can start
Yep.
by just walking, right?
And prioritizing that, right? Because certainly us translating their experiences to our lifestyle in
Mm-hmm.
our respective cities in the United States can be challenging.
Mm-hmm.
It can be scary to walk the streets in Wilmington because there's not always a sidewalk,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
if you don't have a sidewalk, then it can be a little nerve-wracking to walk to and from work, right? But then making that effort to prioritize that activity or make adjustments again to lifestyle and how it is that you do things. And I mean, I'm sure you can attest to this too, or you probably recommend this to people. We don't have to park at the closest parking lot
Not at
to the
all.
grocery store, right? You can
Right.
park a little bit further back and say, okay, I'm going to make that happen. I tell people all the time, your job most likely doesn't pay you for your lunch period unless you're on salary, right? So if you're an hourly employee, take your break. Take that break. Use 15
Yeah.
minutes to eat your lunch, and if you only get 30 minutes or 45, 15 minutes to walk, 15 minutes to eat, right? It doesn't have to be complex. Of course, if it's raining, I'm not telling you to go brave a hurricane, but bring a hat, bundle up, go walk no matter if it's cold outside or not. You know what I mean? So just I totally agree. And one of the other commonalities of the blue zones is socializing. So
Yeah. Yes.
including family and friends in how you partake in food, because again that creates a different awareness and focus on the food itself and allows you to feel your cues for fullness.
Yeah.
So that's something. But what about exercise? Tell us your thoughts
Yeah.
on exercise to kind of round out the conversation.
Yeah, no, 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 no. So you going back to walking, I just want to add that walking is very beneficial, whether you walk 10, 15 minutes. And the reason why it's so beneficial is because one, it takes care of your heart, but also because it's so convenient. Like mostly everybody, can get up and go for a walk,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just to get out and get some sunlight, that's going to be more beneficial, just as beneficial
Yeah.
as, getting out and just going for a walk too. But um, it's so convenient. Like you don't have to change per se, you may have to change your shoes. I know nobody's going to be walking around in some 6-inch heels or whatever, but
Yeah.
you know, but it's so simple to just go out and go for a walk. Whereas, for instance, running, there's so many different biomechanics with running, and I see a lot of different people that just go out for a run, and you don't have the right technique
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and sometimes that can injure you and mess up your
Yeah.
joints and things like that. And you don't have to worry about that with walking, right? Walking, it's easy to do. You just take your time and go for a walk. So that's one thing that you can do. If you can't get outside, if there's no place, a safe place for you to walk, for instance, there's certain exercises that you can do in the house, marching in
Mm-hmm.
place. If you have steps, go up and down the steps if you're able to.
Yep.
That is a great exercise. I remember when I was working in the corporate world, which wasn't my most fun time that I had, but like the working from home, it didn't work for me. Working from home did not work for me because I would literally be going up and down the steps as I'm sitting in a meeting because it was so like I could not sit down. I could not sit still. I'm a fitness trainer. I worked in recreation before that. I'm on the go. So
Yeah.
for me, it was one of those things like, okay, while everybody's sitting here on this meeting, I'm gonna be walking up and down these steps. If I need to talk, I'm gonna be talking while they're gonna see
And
me
I love
walking up and
that.
down the
I
steps.
mean,
Yeah,
what's interesting as a tidbit, and I would encourage people to consider this. There are provisions that could be made with your employer for some of these things. Maybe the answer is that you get a desk that can transition from
right,
sitting to standing, right? And then you
right,
can take, there's some different research as far as how beneficial standing versus sitting versus actually physically walking is going to be. However, that's a reminder of, hey, like I've been standing here for a while. Have I had water? Have I taken a walk?
yeah,
Just things like that, that sometimes we just get so tunnel vision with what we have to do with work. Having a headset that's wireless so that you can do a quick lap around while someone else is talking during the meeting is going to positively contribute to that physical activity. And I love my Apple
oh,
Watch too. It reminds
oh,
me to
yeah,
stand up, right? Stand up, take a
to
breather.
get moving. Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
you
And to that point, oh, go ahead, go
no,
ahead,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say just like, you hit your goal today. Things
Mhm,
like that are other ways that don't really feel like work. Like this doesn't feel like a burden to say,
mhm.
oh, I need to stand up now, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
something
yeah,
that kind of becomes, and certainly that's us millennials and we're kind of used to stuff like this, but people really love that. I got 10,000 steps
yeah,
today. I feel good about
yeah,
that. It keeps you
for
motivated.
sure, for sure. And one thing that I've noticed is that we naturally make healthier decisions when we're more physically active, right? Like if you go to the gym and you get a workout in, you go and you're lifting and you had a heavy strength day, a good strength day, strength training workout, or a good cardio workout, you're gonna leave the gym and you're gonna feel more motivated to be like, I'm gonna drive past that McDonald's because I know I don't need it. I'll get something healthier.
Already
Or even
prep
if you
my
do stop
meal.
it,
I'm gonna skip that.
yeah, exactly. Like you naturally make healthier decisions when you're physically active, when you're
Yep.
exercising. So that is one motivation that I use for my clients, for the people that I work with. Like I tell them, hey, I do have nutritional coaching offers, but initially it's about just the physical fitness component of it, right? Like I'm focused on the physical activity and getting them healthier through
Mhm.
that. And initially and naturally they're just going to start making healthier decisions because they're going to see the benefits. They're going to be like, okay, I just worked out. So because I finished working out, I'm going to make the day a healthier day. And then they're going to realize after making a healthier decision throughout the day, like, oh man, I feel different. I feel better. Like I don't feel as tired. I don't feel as groggy. I'm going to keep doing this. And it just becomes
Mhm.
natural. And that's one thing that you get as a benefit from doing exercise versus starting a nutrition plan first and then trying to get into the physical
Oh,
activity component. It doesn't.
I've already discovered what our next conversation can be.
Uh
Um, because the dilemma of diet versus exercise. Because I do
oh.
think a lot of people would say the nutrition piece of it is a bit more important long term than
Yeah,
just the exercise. But we'll put a
yeah,
pin in
yeah.
that. We'll put a
I
pin
like
in that.
that. I like
I
that.
like the
I like
fact that
that
that can, you know, create a good
for
discussion
sure.
in the future. But you're right. There are so many benefits to exercise that people negate. Exercising helps you sleep better. Exercise boosts
Yeah,
your mood. Um, exercise can oftentimes be social for people. Um, exercise improves your digestion. So things that people like, I swear, I'm sure people get frustrated with, well, you should do exercise. Like every time you go to talk, well, tell me about your physical activity. They're like,
yeah,
she asked me this about every single thing I come in here about. Yeah, because you're totally right. It can
yeah,
positively impact if you sit at a desk and don't physically exercise, then you might not sleep well. It your body, yeah, your mind might be tired, but your body is ready to go. It
hmm,
wants to do, it inherently wants to work, it wants to do some of those things. And of course that's not everybody's story, but a tired body likes to sleep. That's the simple way that I put it to people. A tired body likes to sleep.
yeah,
um, so I love that. This was
yeah.
a good conversation.
Well, not even. I think so. I
Yeah.
know so. It's not even. Yeah. No, it was. It was. Anybody got any questions in the comments or anything?
Yes, thank y'all for
Anything?
hanging in
Yes.
there with us.
Appreciate y'all joining us, Jocelyn. I see that you're here.
Ashlyn, Faye, Roz Dawes.
Yep, Ashlyn. That's wifey.
Oh, hey. Very
Yep,
nice.
yep, yep.
But
What's the name of the Blue Zones documentary
I
on
haven't
Netflix?
seen it, so I'm
Oh
not sure. I need to
man,
refer
I do not know the name of it off the top of my head. Ah,
to it. I'll
I'd
pull it
have to
up on
look
my
it up and
laptop. Hold on, let me
okay, go
see.
ahead, pull it up, pull it
Yeah.
up. Just type in Blue Zones Netflix. It's like a series. It's like 6 or 7 episodes, and they talk about each area. For those that may have just joined, Blue Zones are specific areas in the world that the population of people within that area live over 100 years old. So those are called Blue Zones. So there's a documentary that's out on Netflix. If it's
It
still up there,
is
um,
called Live to 100 Secrets of the Blue Zones.
how many episodes is it? I just want to make sure that's the right one.
Uh,
It's like 6, 7, something like that.
uh,
Never
It does not
mind.
say because it's like a
Okay.
multiple. It's like
Okay.
an article. It's like an article that came up.
Okay. Okay. That might be it. I can't remember the name of it to be honest, but I'm pretty certain that if you just search Blue Zones in Netflix, you'll find it.
Let's see.
Really good documentary, very informative. They talked about one thing. This is one thing you didn't bring up, Constance. You talked about the social aspect. I want to bring this up before we go because I know it's a little
Uh,
over time right here. But
it's 4 episodes. Four.
4 episodes, yeah, I think that's it. I believe that's
Yep.
it. That's it. But you talked about the social component. You talked about the social component of like within these blue zones and pretty much what other countries are doing in comparison to what we're doing. The other side of things that has affected our health and our heart health especially is stress, right? And being able to relieve stress from, work, all these other different situations, family life, financial situations, all these different things play a role in contributing to our stress. And that's one thing that they kind of address in Live to 100. That's the name of it. That's the name of it. Yeah. So, but stress contributes to our heart health and affects our health especially. And one thing that they talked about as far as in the documentary as well as through a number of different research articles is that stress is a great relief because it helps people to live a healthier and a longer lifestyle. So that is something that definitely plays a role in our health. And by managing the stress that we have here uh, through exercise, through therapy, because we don't really talk about that much. Those are all important things that we have to do in order to maintain a healthier lifestyle.
And um, and not to serious this out, in a different way, but again, that's what makes us banding together as a culture and takes the shift to making this a more Black history focused um conversation, because when it comes to stress and stress management, when there's systematic racism that is at play, that makes it harder for you to access care in an effective way, or access medication, or live in an environment that is conducive to walking outside. Some people don't feel safe
Yeah,
walking, right?
yeah.
Those are conversations that has to be included in how we navigate these things, and what are we going to do as a culture, and how are we going to make our voices heard so that things get better for us,
Yeah.
and not just that we go to therapy to discuss the microaggressions that we experience at work, but that as a whole American culture, not just Black American culture, but American culture, we are really making strides to make the workplace look different for all of us, make going to the grocery store look different for all of us, make going to the doctor's office different for all of us. So I just want, as we talk about all of the things that we can do, we have to at the same time acknowledge that, like, we see everyone, we see you, we know that it's hard, but through conversations like this, we can work together to start to be that change that we want to see, uplift each other, give you a boost to kind of,
Mm,
get you up if you
mhm.
need it, and know that there's at least 2 people on Instagram that are ready and willing to help you learn all of the things that you need to learn, so that you don't have to solely rely on people that maybe you don't always trust, or that you don't know how to open up to. There are tactics that we'll continue to talk about over time to sort of build that foundation for all of us to be as healthy as we can be, no matter where we live, no matter what we look like, so that we can, be our best
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah, and it's a ongoing battle as we just continue to strive
Mhm.
forward. So, um, what's up, brother? But yeah, so it's one I see, one of my frat brothers, but
All right.
uh, but yeah, no, it's an ongoing battle, and we just got to continue to strive forward, and I think continuing to address certain things is and having those conversations, are the ways to make progress, and I think we're doing that. If you or if anybody here has any questions regarding anything that we talked about tonight or anything else in general regarding health or wellness, feel free to reach out to us. And I promise if we don't know the answer, we know somebody else that
We can
does.
find it, okay?
Yeah, we can find them. So we are not afraid of reaching out to others. We don't want to feel like we are the true experts in the room, and that's why we're continuing to learn as well.
Mhm.
And we want to continue to strive forward and just continue to keep building. So yeah, yeah, man, that's it. That was good. Woo!
I love it. We're
Yeah,
going to, this is great. Thank you all for joining us today. Tell a friend to tell a friend to check out the
yes.
lives.
Yes, we will be back in March with the date coming upcoming soon. So just kind of be on the lookout. We'll be able to post this as well, so that anybody that may have been coming in late, you'll be able to see this, see the full video, as well as we'll be sharing it through YouTube
Yep,
as well.
that's right. Have a good evening, y'all.
Right now, night.
Night.